I understand there was a meeting last night of its leadership trying to figure out and quell a potential outburst. But in days to come, we will see how that manifests. Okay, take it light. We are, as a country, being foisted a rhetoric and a narrative by a party that for 10 years, which they hate to be reminded about, Mr. President, between 2008 and 2018, carried this country through the mire, the muck of economic mismanagement and disaster. And to be lectured by a party which now is in the House again, having not once apologized to the public of Barbados for the economic mismanagement that it meted out to this nation, and now wants to come and lecture and quote figures about 1,400 houses in 10 years. Must I remind the honourable member, Mr. President, that we had to go through, and we're still coming out of it, the worst external shock in the history of this earth within the last 103 years, namely the COVID-19 pandemic. And if you want to start with figures, and if I had to go by the honourable member's figures, just if I had to go by those figures, where the honourable member indicated the Democratic Labour Party produced 1,400 houses in 10 years. If my math serves me correctly, that's 140 houses a year. In 10 years, where there was no COVID-19.
Point of order.
Raise, Senator Walters.
And Mr. President, the honourable members must lead in the House. I never quoted any figures about our performance in government, the Democratic Labour Party.
Sorry, so the figure of 1,400 houses in the, right, and you're saying that you mentioned figures in your speech, you're saying that you're attributing them to someone else?
No, I did not, Mr. President, mention in quantity. The quantity of 1,400 came from the leader of government business, Mr. President.
No.
And, okay. Notice, Senator Walters. Continue, Senator Blackman.
Mr. President, this is perhaps the second time since I've come to this honourable chamber that I've seen a member from the Democratic Labour Party distance itself from its own utterances and its own words, and it therefore tells the story, and I hope all Barbadians who are watching this live debate that they understand that the Democratic Labour Party continues to divorce itself from itself. You're unashamed to stand by your own words.
Senator Blackman, there's a point of order. I want you to raise.
Mr. President, I want to make it clear that Senator Cummins introduced in her speech and her remarks that the Democratic Labour Party built 1,400 houses in 10 years, and then she went on to compare that to the record of the Barbados Labour Party government. In my response, Mr. President, I clearly identified what the Barbados Labour Party did in the 5 years before 2008 and the 6 years since 2018. And then I identified specific projects which the Democratic Labour Party completed, Mr. President.
Are you raising to dispute the 1,400 houses?
No, I'm raising to dispute the claim that he's saying that the President, that the Senator is saying that I am separating myself from the statements, because they never made the statement, so there's nothing to separate myself from.
But you're not disputing the figures. So Senator Blackman, please don't attribute the figures to Senator Walters. Just press on with the figures as presented and not disputed by Senator Cummins.
I agree, and as I'm reminded by my honourable leader that those things might get honourable members expelled from their parties, particularly at national conferences. However, Mr. President, I move on. So if I'm to go by those figures, wherever they came from, perhaps from on high, okay? You have a situation where under this administration, having come to government in 2018, facing 2 weeks possible of disaster if this economy was not arrested in terms of fixed, having to then go to an IMF program to stabilize after the economic mismanagement, and then after we were starting to see some signs of growth, COVID-19 came and lick up and shut down the world. And the monies that had to do a number of projects across the country had to then be deployed so as to stabilize this nation in the advent of COVID-19. And yet, if we look at the figures mentioned and being quoted, about 70 per year. And I will get that figure confirmed and update the public. But even if that number is true that the honorable member went by, during a pandemic, during an IMF program, and you were able to, within 5 years, 4 years, at an average, make 70 houses per year. And in 10 years, you were able to only do 140 per year. It tells me, therefore, that on the laws of averages, the Democratic Labour Party was not doing the job. It was not doing the job. And instead of building houses, Mr. President, a number of their members were building their pocket. I get impersonal, I talk in facts.
Bring facts.
I will bring the facts, Mr. President. The fact is, a member of the Democratic Labour Party, a former government minister, who is also a current member of their national executive, spent time in a penal institution in the United States of America. That is a fact. Heard of who? Not me. Let us talk. Mr. President, as I keep saying in this chamber, those who come to equity must come with clean hands. And this administration, of which I'm proud to be a part of, will not be lectured by a party who knows no resemblance of what it means for good economic governance. You have a situation where houses started in Kienville were left unfinished by the Democratic Labour Party administration. There were some houses that they built, they just pulled together some contractors, no proper scope. Fridges, Mr. President, could not even fit through the door. People went to, Mr. President, sir, I am addressing you and this honorable chamber. And those who want to now come back to public life, believing that people forget what they did in the past, I will teach them today about good governance and public life. Mr. President, sir, if they want to talk about the Auditor General, let us go to the 2016 one. Let us go. Let us go. Because I know they will walk out this chamber and not come back in here. Don't come. And Mr. President, I don't mean you. Thank you. Let us go. They want to talk about forensics. Let us go into forensics. You had a situation where there were a total of 679 repairs have been completed to date. This is not Chad Blackman's words, Mr. President, sir. This is who? Auditor General, 2016, NHC. They left office in 2018. So this report is applicable to the Democratic Labour Party. A total of, and I read from the report, Mr. President, a total of 679 repairs have been completed to date, whilst a total of 535 houses have been built to date. No problem. And when you go further in the report, you have to ask yourselves, and I encourage all Barbadians to go back to the 2016 report, because they want to start and come and want to lecture people. Mr. President, it is as if Lucifer coming and tell you you need to go to church. It can't work. Can't work. Mr. President, if I see Lucifer coming and giving me spiritual counsel again, run hard. You have a situation where, and it goes on. In January 2011, the board of the NHC and the Cabinet of Barbados, this is the Democratic Labour Party, approved the construction of a high-rise apartment unit for rental at several urban sites using the Joint Partnership Housing Program, Mr. President, which approved by the Cabinet in 2009. These included projects at Valerie, Calamarok, Grotto, and Beckles Road, estimated at 15.799 million and 18 million respectively. Any project undertaken by the corporation should be first approved by its board before onward transmission to the Cabinet for ratification. Mr. President, it says it was, however, noted, therefore there's a contradiction as we go forward. It was, however, noted that these projects were approved by the Cabinet on the 13th of January 2011, Mr. President, and thereby by the Board by circulation resolution between the 14th and 20th of January. Cabinet first, Mr. President. Those who come to equity must come with clean hands. Mr. President, today is going to be a long day in this chamber. The report goes on, Mr. President. There was no evidence provided. I shall repeat, this is the Auditor General's report. He says in the 2016 report, there was no evidence provided to indicate that the management of the NHC carried out the necessary financial and technical review on the Grotto and Valerie projects before submission to the board for approval. Such a review, he went on, would have assisted the board in determining whether the proposals as presented met the corporation's policy objective of providing housing for lower income persons in a cost-effective manner. The management, Mr. President, of the corporation did not go to the public tender with these projects, even though the expenditure exceeded the 100,000 threshold, then applicable under Financial Rules 1971. The tendering process would have advertised the project to a larger pool of potential developers, therefore facilitating greater competition in the selection process. But I go on a little further. According to the evidence provided, the NHC board approved the Grotto project for the construction of 67 apartment units in 3 blocks at $18 million. The circular resolution by which the project was approved by the board contained a proviso that the selected developer be requested to submit a proposal for the construction of the apartment units in 3 blocks by March 2011. It says no proposal was seen from the developer. I repeat, no proposal was seen from the developer for the construction of 76 apartment units in 3 blocks. You start this debate today, my friend, we can finish it. A proposal was submitted by the developer on the 10th of October 2012 for the construction of 80 units in 5 blocks and 84 car parking spaces at a cost of $27.85 million, which was Mr. President, which was $9.85 million more than the $18 million approved. I shall repeat, Mr. President, I shall repeat, and all those online, all those who are watching it later tonight in the news, I want you to hear what I'm saying. Auditor General report, which was $9.85 million more. And I hope the camera can see this.
Please just focus on the chair.
No problem, Mr.
I'm not Sony or Nikon, I'm not on camera. Just focus on the chair, please.
As I said, which was $9.85 million more than the $18 million approved by the Cabinet and the board of the NHC. There is no evidence, Mr. President, that this request was assessed by the corporation. Now, how then in 2024 is the good day of our Lord? On the eve of our 58th anniversary of independence, on the eve of our 3rd year of being a republic nation, can a Democratic Labour Party, of which, and I must remind the public, Senator Worrell was a member of that administration when this report was applicable. At which point did Senator Worrell then and now and thereafter in between come to the public to refute this, to apologize for it, but he's now part of an administration that wants to lecture and to give the public bedtime stories about honesty and good governance. Where, how, when? Cannot be. So I encourage the honourable members from that side to offer the public not only an explanation, but as you do in Lent, Mr. President, I would encourage, just as you do in Lent,
There's a point of order. There's a point of order.
Point of
Reverend Canon,
just
Dr.
seeking
Rogers.
some clarity from the honourable member, because I'm following the argument. And just for the clarity of the chamber, the 18-point-something million was for 3 blocks. But when you quoted the 27 million, it said 5 blocks. Yes. So it's not the same thing. I just wanted to make that. Yes.
Notice, Senator Rogers, was there any difference in the number of apartments?
Mr. President, I will seek clarification and to give to you and to the honourable member and those in public so that there's no misleading at all. No. Because why? No, because I will ensure that there's clarity. Now, Mr. President, I go on a little further. On the 4th of December 2012, the Permanent Secretary requested for the management of the corporation a cost breakdown for the 18 million approved by the board and cabinet and the 27.85 million submitted by the developer in order to justify the request for the increase from the amount approved by the cabinet. On the 14th of May 2013, the Permanent Secretary received an elemental breakdown of the 27.85 million from the developer, but there was no evidence that a cost breakdown for the 18 million was received. Evidence seen indicates that the contract had been signed and the project commenced on the 1st of April 2013, before the Permanent Secretary received the requested information. Therefore, the Permanent Secretary's efforts to reconcile the cost increase before seeking Cabinet's approval was frustrated. I repeat, for the public's benefit. Therefore, the Permanent Secretary's efforts to reconcile the cost increase before seeking Cabinet's approval was frustrated. For the public, frustrated by the Democratic Labour Party administration and their operatives. The increase was subsequently approved by the Cabinet on the 30th of May. You have to ask yourself, why did they approve it? I'm not in their contemplation because I was not part of that Cabinet, Mr. President, sir. The point is clear. As I said, those who come to equity must come with clean hands. And one of the things that I want to support our administration on, and to thank them for, is that we now have a situation where there's confidence that has returned to the economy. It is not only government building houses, Mr. President. The private sector now has expressed confidence and they're looking to build houses across the country. And there is this fake argument that the Democratic Labour Party likes to advance and foist upon this nation. And you can't please them, Mr. President, sir. When you're building houses, you're not focused on agriculture. When you focus on agriculture, you're not providing housing. There is a balance that has to be struck. People can't eat housing, and you can't live without food. You have to provide both as your government. And this government has made it clear when the good people of this country saw it fit to remove the Democratic Labour Party in 2018 and to return us again in 2022 to forge ahead to provide housing solutions as well as food security and treating to it in a way that will ensure Barbados continues to be a prosperous and holistic destination for our people. And on this whole thing about realistic and that the numbers are too large for housing, I remember, Mr. President, sir, I was a youngster, primary school, going from secondary school. And I remember in my first year at foundation school, you had a situation where the then Prime Minister and the then Barbados Labour Party having to once again rescue Barbados from the Democratic Labour Party mismanagement when they laid off thousands in 1891. Thousands, Mr. President. And the then Prime Minister, Owen Arthur, said that he will create 20,000 jobs in Barbados. Mr. President, he was scoffed at, he was laughed at, ridiculed. And within 3 years, 4 years, this economy saw the 20,000 jobs. And in 1999, the good people of Barbados returned the Labour Party administration. 29 seats, 28-2. Mr. President, you were part of that team. So the point I'm making is this. The Labour Party in its history is known for coming with tangible projections that are not only ambitious or realistic, but create a new weight class. And that is the whole point. You don't come to public life to tinker. Yes, you meet challenges and you have to readjust. But the history of this country, particularly post-independence, will always show when this country has advanced in leaps and bounds, it was under the Labour Party. We come for a big and bold agenda, and that is where the confidence of the public continues to reside on this side. You don't come to the public with any warm palmy or recycled oatmeal, Mr. President, sir. Bajans are accustomed now to a higher quality of life. Are there global challenges affecting things on the local front? Yes. But that is why there's governance with our representatives abroad on the front line, our government engaging at the highest level so as to ensure that there is effective space to build out our people. And I just simply want to say this. The Honourable Senator indicated that the government is not up and down bragging about the transfer of title. One of the things that remains to the core of the philosophy of the Barbados Labour Party is humility. When you look at the tenets of Brantley Adams, the founding father of our party and the father of our democracy in this country, one of the things that you're taught as a young Labour Party person is when you do good for people, you don't have to call the media every time to do, no. The transfer of title, Mr. President, is not one where people in their situation don't have to go and advertise each time. This is a quiet transfer. There are times, yes, when you let the public know certain things like that. But it is not for us in this country to exploit people because of a photo op. That was the legacy of the Democratic Labour Party, and look where it ended them, out of governance. So in wrapping up, Mr. President, I can only encourage, because I understand that they have their issues to deal with on that side in George Street. A new leader may emerge, perhaps one of the senators here, and, you know, I get it. So they don't want to try to deflect and bring other attention to other things. But I want to encourage Barbadians to stay the course. Believe you me, 2025 will be a year of significant growth and development, not just in housing, but in other parts of the economy and our country. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Blackman. Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I beg to move the suspension of this sitting of the House for lunch until 2:30 p.m.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 2:30 p.m. today. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This sitting is suspended until 2:30 p.m. today.